everyone, myself Dr. M. Lakshmi Prasad, working as an associate professor in the Department of Data Science in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. In this video, I am going to discuss about introduction to primary and secondary sources of data. So data collection is nothing but a term which is going to be used to describe for preparing and collection of data and systematic gathering of the data for a particular purpose from various sources that has been systematically observed, recorded, and organized. So the data are the basic inputs to any decision making process in the business. Okay, so data collection is nothing but a term that is going to be describe the process of preparing and collecting the data. So the preparing and collecting should be the major tasks of this data collection. And the systematic gathering of the data for a particular purpose from various sources is to be done, and that should has to be systematically observed, recorded, and then organized. And the data are the basic inputs to any decision making process in the business. So the purpose of data collection is that, so here we have to be obtain the information. So where have to obtain the information? So that is from whether it is come from primary source or it may be come from secondary source, and we have to be keep the record. So that means in what way how to be keep the data, whether it may be in the form of text or I can able to keep it in the form of table like that. And to make decision about the important issues, suppose the data may able to come from different sources, that should be treated it as a raw data. But in this raw data we have to be identify which is the best or suitable data for the corresponding application. We have to be find it out, and so to pass the information on the others. So since the data may be able to from different sources, so the main purpose should be we have to obtain the information, keeping on the record, and to make the decisions on important issues and to pass the information on to the others. The steps to the data collection is that, so clarify your data collection goals and develop operational definitions and procedures. And next one, we have to be validate the system, measurement system, and begin the data collection and continue improving measurement system and ensure the people are following the data collection guidelines. So we have, in order to implement this data collection, so we have to follow some of the steps. So very first thing should be clarify your data collection goals, and second one we have to be develop operational definitions and procedures, and we have to be validate the measurement system, and we have to be begin the data collection and continue improving measurement system and ensure the people are following the data collection guidelines. So normally the data is going to be classified into two types. So very first thing should be primary data, and second one should be secondary data. So what is the classification of this? And comes to the primary data. So let's see the differences between the primary and secondary one. So here meaning of this primary data is that, so the primary data refers to the first hand data gathered so by the researcher himself, and secondary data means that the data is to be collected by someone else earlier, and the data what we treated as the real time data, but the secondary data will be treated as a past data. And for the process what is should be very involvement is going to be there, but when it comes to the secondary data it should be quick and easy one. And for the sources, so where you can able, what are the sources of the primary data should be, it may be surveys, observations, experiments, questionnaire, and personal interview. So whereas the secondary data means that the government publication, website, books, journals, articles, and internal records, etc. So the cost effectiveness when it comes to that, it should be very expensive since it should be a first hand information, and the data what we're going to collect that should be the original one. And for the secondary it should be economical, that is not that much expensive because already the data is going to be published. And the collection time should be very long if you are going to look at this primary data, whereas it should be very limited when compared to the secondary data. So the specific, so always specific to the researcher needs and may not specific to the researcher need. And it should be available in crude form, whereas it should be available in the refined form. So crude form in the sense the raw data, whatever it is, and the accuracy and ability should be more when here it should be comparatively less when compared to the primary data. So these are the some of the basic differences what we have observed between the primary one and it should be the secondary one. So the meaning itself, it should be a first hand information, then secondary source means the data already collected by someone else, and the data should be real time data for the primary, and then it should be a past data for the secondary. And the sources of this primary data normally it should be surveys, and then through observations, experiments, questionnaire, personal interviews, etc. Whereas when it comes to the secondary data, the source may be from the government publications, website, books, journals, articles, and internal reports. So the expensive also the primary data when compared to the second one, and the lifetime of the primary data or collection time of the primary data should be took very long time, so when compared to secondary data. So let's see in detail about the primary data. So the data which are collected from the field under the control and supervision of an investigator, that thing will be treated as a primary data. Otherwise, we should not be considered as a secondary data. So the primary data means the original data that has been collected, especially for purpose in mind. And this type of data are generally fresh and then collected for the first time. And it should be useful for the current studies as well as for the future studies. Suppose example your own questionnaire. So the data which are going to be collected under the control and supervision of investigator. So that thing will be treated as the primary data, and the primary data means the original data which should be collected specially mainly purpose in mind, and this type of data should be a fresh and the collected for the first time information. So one of the example of collecting the primary data should be questionnaire. So what are the primary research methods and techniques? So normally this primary data is going to be classified in two types. So what we call it as a quantitative, and other one what we said it as a qualitative. So quantitative means where unable to conduct in the form of surveys, or I can able to conduct in the form of experiments. So surveys means where unable to conduct in the form of personal interviews, mail, in-house and self-administered, telephone, fax, email, and web. And experiments in the sense where mechanical observation or simulation. These are the things that maybe comes under these experiments. Similarly, for the qualitative data, we can able to see in the form of focus groups and individual depth view interviews, human observation, and case studies. So these are the some of the primary research technique methods and techniques. So that is applied on the quantitative as well as the quantitative. So the quantitative and qualitative information. So quantitative means it should be in the form of numbers, whereas the qualitative that should be in more details. So tells us why, when, uh, and how. And quantitative means it should be in the form of uh, some measurements we have to be assigned to the variables that should be quantitative. Example, where does not tell why, you, when, and how. Okay, but it should be the qualitative data able to tell about why, when, you, and then how. The primary research categories, quantitative research that should be numerical, statistical, and then projectable to the broader population. And Sampling methods. Some first thing should be a random sample. So equal chance of anything being picked in the random sample, and which may select those are not in the form of target group discriminant. And the sample sizes also need to be large and should be very representative, and it should be also very expensive also, right? So equal chance of any one can be being picked, that should be random sample, and the sample size need to be large, and it should be also very expensive. And next one is stratified or segment sampling. So here the sample should be collected on the basis of representative strata, or what we call it as the a segment here. So the stratified segment means some particular portion of the population what I'm going to be extracted. So that thing should be treated as a stratified or segment random sampling. So samples, but they still random, but not be more focused one, and it should may also give more relevant information, and it should be also more cost effective. And next one should be quota sampling. So here the quota sampling means it should be and again by segment in nature, and then it should not be randomly selected, and specific number of each segment are going to be interviewed and may not be fully representative, and it should be a cheaper method. Okay, so the quota sampling means it should be again the form of segment, not randomly selected, and it should be specific a number of each segment that is going to be interviewed and may not be fully representative, and it should be a cheaper method. And next one is qualitative research. So here we have to be in depth, and it should be a non-numerical one, and there should be a directional, that should be qualitative research. And some of the common techniques that can be performed on the qualitative research will be personal interviews, that should be in the form of death or one-to-one, and focus groups with maybe 8 to 12, and mini groups 3 to 6. Some other methods what we can able to identify should be observational method. So observation method means we can able to through personal observation and personal interview through the questionnaire, and telephone interview means we are able to call and call timing, some mail survey, that should be through mail questionnaire. So these are the some of this questionnaire methods that are available. So observation methods means through the personal observation, and the personal interview means through the questionnaire, and telephone interview means through the call outcomes and call timings, and mail survey through mail questionnaire. So then comes to the secondary data. So the data that is going to be gathered and then recorded by someone else prior to and the purpose other than the current project. Okay, so the data which is going to be gathered and recorded by someone else prior to and the purpose other than the current project. So secondary data is the data that has been collected for the other purpose, and it should also involve less cost, time, and effort. And the secondary data is the data that is being reused, and usually in different context. For example, the data from the book. So secondary data is the data which is already being collected by someone else already, and it should be also the reused one. Example, obtaining the data from the book. So what are the sources that are available for gathering this secondary data? Uh, so internal sources. So internal sources will be sales record, marketing activity, cost information, distributor reports and feedback, and customer feedback. So these are the some of the internal sources like sales record, marketing activity, cost information, and distributor records and customer feedback. Some of the external sources what we are going to have should be generals and then books, magazines, newspapers, library, and internet. So these are the some of these external sources of the data what we are going to have, and that should be for generals means so all the data that is going to be generals in various generals and books, textbooks, magazines, and the data what is coming from newspapers should also be treated as external source data what is coming from libraries and internet. So these are all the sources of the secondary data. So secondary data would be the internal source and external source. So these and all will be considered as the external source. And next one we're going to see about the advantages and disadvantages of the primary data. So the target issues are going to be addressed and data interpretation is better and efficient spending for information and decency of data and proprietary issues and address specific research issues and greater control. So the advantage of primary data means whatever the target issues are addressed, we can able to meet them, and the data interpretation also going to be better, and efficient sampling for information, and decency of data, proprietary issues, then address specific research issues, and greater control. So these are the some of the advantages of the primary. When it comes to the secondary, so the data the disadvantage should be high cost and it should be time consuming one and inaccurate feedbacks and more number of results are required. Since the data should be first hand data, so lot of expenditure is needed for that and the time consuming also be more and the feedbacks what you're getting should also be not that much accurate and more number of results also required here. When it comes to the secondary data, so the advantage should be easy of access and low cost to acquire, and classification of research question may answer the research question. So the secondary data should be easy of access since the data is already published one, and the cost should also be less, and the classification of clarification of research question also done and may answer the research question also. So what are the disadvantages here? And so here the quality of research and it not specific to the researcher need that is not that much useful and incomplete information is also available and it should not be not timely in nature. So let's see the data collection flow here. So how the data is going to be processed. So for the first thing should be data sources. From this data sources we should be seen primary data source and secondary data source. Again, this secondary source data source will be classified in two types like internal one and external one. So the internal sources means that so where sales results, marketing activity, and cost information, distributor reports and feedback, and customer feedback like that. So if I'm going to see the external sources, so that should be the internet and standardized source of marketing and published data will be treated as external source. If I'm going to consider again this published data, there should be electronic and then printed. So electronic means that government, trade associations, periodicals, newspapers, books, annual reports, and private studies. So like this, the information is going to be classified in two types, like public, what we call it as electronic and then printed one. So similarly, if I'm going to see about the standardized source of marketing, so here You can able to see the store audits, warehouse withdrawal services, consumer purchase patterns, and single source data, and Nielsen's television index, scratch stores, arbitrary panel, and multimedia services. So once the sources are going to be classified, uh, so there may be a chance of getting missing data here. So with some of the various methods that are available for handling the missing data will be deletion methods and imputation methods. So deletion methods means where you can able to delete the cases or variables that are missing, like list-wise methods, pairwise methods, and then variable deletion methods. So similarly, if I'm going to take imputation methods, what we call as substitution methods. So here the single imputation, that means that again they should be divided into two further categories: single imputation and double imputation. So if you're going to see the single imputation, again the methods are going to be classified different types like mean and conditional mean, case mean, last observation carry forward, worst case imputation, best case imputation, and EM imputation. Okay, so normally the data collection is done. Then this data collection would be again different tabs. What I said should be primary and secondary. Again, this primary we have qualitative and quantitative. Then the sources will be different here. So the primary and secondary sources. So the sources for the secondary will be magazines, textbooks, newspapers, and this one through done through questionnaires like that. So the sources, primary and secondary, everything is done. So the data is going to be come from any of the source, and the data what we called as the raw data, and there may be a chance of missing data here. So then, what are the methods that are available for handling this missing data, right? So missing data means there may be a chance of wrong data, or it may be uh, duplicate data, and sometimes null data, and sometimes we also get the data in the form of zeros as well. So in order to avoid these types of missing data, we are going to have methods of handling missing data. So for that, there will be of two types. What I said just now, that should be deletion methods and imputation methods. So deletion means where this deleting the cases or variable that are missing, and imputation means what we call as substitution methods. So again, these deletion methods will be of different categories. So like list-wise deletion, pair-wise deletion, variable deletion, and for the imputation, single and double imputation. So single, under this single, we are going to have mean, conditional mean, case mean, regression, last observation carried, worst case, best case, and yield. So let's see one by one what should be the list-wise deletion. So the list-wise deletion means it should be a very good method when the proportion of the missing data is less than 15%. And the advantages should be it should be used for any type of statistical analysis, and no special computations are required, and the parameter estimations are going to be unbiased, and the standard errors are appropriate and compared to the original data. The disadvantage should be that it may be remove the considerable fraction of the data. So list-wise deletion. So here it should be a good method when the portion of missing data is less than 15%. The advantage should be it should be used for any kind of statistical analysis, and no special computations are required here. And the standard errors are going to be appropriate to the original data. And the disadvantage should be it should be removed from considerable fraction of the data. So here the subject, let's see the example. So I'm taking the age, gender and income I'm taking. So under this, while gathering the data, here the data is missing. For the third employee, the income is missing, and for the fourth employee, the gender is missing, and for eighth employee, age is missing. So what is the list-wise deletion means? So whenever the data that is missing, we simply delete that rows. So that should be list-wise deletion. And next one, what should be called as a pairwise deletion. So pairwise deletion means dropping the cases with missing values on based on analysis basis. Okay. So the advantage of this method should be using all the available non-missing data. The disadvantage is that estimated standard errors and test statistics are to be biased here. So the pairwise deletion involves dropping cases with missing values on analysis to analysis base, and advantage should be non-missing data, and disadvantage should be estimated standard errors and test statistics. Okay, so here what I'm going to should be pairwise deletion. So based on analysis and analysis base, so if I'm going to look at this, so the income is important, and gender is missing, and age is missing. Out of these three, so which is going to be best one? So whether it is going to be delete that age is missing, it is going to delete this, or gender is missing, it is better to delete, or income is missing, it is better to delete. So that means it is gender is not that much important, so I can able to delete this. And next one is variable deletion. So here it is also dropping the variables here uh, with missing values on a case by case basis. So previous thing what I have done should be analysis by analysis, and variable means case by case. So the advantage is that makes the sense when lot of missing values in a variable, and if the variable is relatively less important. So the disadvantage should be the loss of information regarding the variable. Okay. So how this? So whether if I'm going to see this age, so age is missing here. Gender for the fourth employee it is missing, and for the income the third employee is missing. So what I have to do? So whether it is better to delete if I'm going to perform the variable deletion. So whether which variable is going to be deleted, whether I have to delete age or gender or income. So out of these three, so gender is going to be that much preference is going to be constant. So that's why I'm going to delete this variable. Okay. And next one is the mean imputation. So mean imputation in the sense, so where we can able to replace the missing values with the mean of that variable. So mean that means that uh, suppose these are the variables I'm having, and this is the data I'm necessarily here for the variables. So what I have to do is, so we have to be take the mean of this variable. So how the mean is going to be calculated? So we are going to have some mean equal to, so 9 plus 8 plus 7 so on, 8 divided by 10, suppose if it is 7.4. So whatever the missing data is occurring here, right? So that's place is going to be filled with the mean value. So similarly for the variable 3, so find out this mean value again, like 8 plus 6 plus 6 up to so 7 divided by 10. Suppose if I am going to get 6.72 something, so this value is going to be filled here. So that should be the mean imputation. Means we are able to replace this missing values with the mean of that variable. Our next one is that conditional mean computation. So the conditional means that so we have to be replace the missing values with the value of the variable uh, meant for the relevant subgroup. Okay, suppose so I am going to give some condition here, conditional mean. Suppose if the mean value what I am getting should be 7.25. So if that mean is greater than, if that mean is equal to this, then I have to fix 8.25. Else if the mean value is less than 7, then I can able to fill with 7.0, like this. I have to apply some conditions on the mean what I'm going to calculate, and that value is going to be filled the missing value. So here also I can able to apply some condition on this, I can able to fill. And case mean imputation, so we have to be replace the missing values with the information from other variables for the same case to impute the missing value. So the case mean imputation means, so we have to be replace uh, the missing values information from other variables of the same case. That means so here the data is going to miss, and here also data is going to miss for the same case. So they we have to be calculate the mean of this three. Case mean imputation. So I have to calculate. So 7 plus 6 plus divided by 3, that should be 13.3. So 13.2. So that should be around 6.50. So that one is going to be filled. So similarly here I have to calculate 7 plus 8 divided by 2. That should be 15 by 2. That means 7.5 something. So that value is going to be filled. In previous example, I'm going to calculate the variable mean. So I'm just the variable mean is substituted here the missing value, and conditional mean also same. But here the case mean means we have to be calculate the case mean of that values and then have to be filled. And next one is that regression imputation. So here the regression imputation means that so here we have to be replace the missing values from the complete cases to predict the value of the missing data, and based on the regression equation for the cases with the missing values, non-missing values. So here also I mean that the data is missing. So what have to be done in this regression imputation means, so here previously what I did, so previously I can able to fill with the mean of the variable and mean of the case, right? But here I have to be fill exactly, I can able to predict what should be the exact value that is going to be filled with this missing data. How it should be done means by make use of these regression equations. So how this, let us define one regression equation like variable 1 is equal to 4.621 minus 0.734 into variable 2 plus 1.139 into variable 3. So like this I have to fill this values by substituting values in the regression equation. That means that 4.621 minus 0.734 into variable 2. What should be the variable 2? 7 plus 1.139 into variable 3. 3 is 6. So after substituting these values, I'm going to say get some value, right? So that value is going to be filled with this. So that should be the this should be the exact value what can able to get uh, for the missed data. Similarly, for this, I can able to fill with some other regression equation or same regression equation. I'm going to get it. So similarly, I get in variable 3. So for this, there should be 1 and this should be 2, right? So the variable 3 should be, so 4.621 minus 7.34 into variable 1. What should be 7 plus 1.139 into 8. So what should we get? We can able to get something like 5.65. So this value is going to be filled with the missing data. That should be the regression imputation. And the next method what can I able to perform here is that, so lost observation carry forward. So that means we can able to impute the missing value on the same outcome and the more recent time it was observed, that variance, that means the average of T1 and T2. So here the data is missing and here also the data is missing. So how this, if I'm going to be perform lost observation carry forward, that means uh, here we can able to calculate the average of that. So if I'm going to be calculate the average of this, I can able to fill with missing data. Similarly, if I'm going to calculate the average, then that should be filled with the missing data. So how the average is let be. So what should be the value here? So for the T1, it should be the average of 7 plus 6 by 2. So that means 13 by 2, that should be 6.5 something. So I can able to fill roughly with this 7. So similarly, how to calculate this? 7 plus 8 by 2, that should be 15 by 2, that should be 7.5. So roughly it should be 8. So that one is going to be filled. And interpolation, so it is the other kind of method where can able to be performed here. So using this interpolation, we can able to fill that with the missing values, or then it should be also useful for the longitudinal data sets. So what should be the worst case and best case imputation? So the worst case replaces a missing value with the worst case scenario for the categorical outcome. Similarly, for the best case, replaces the missing value with the best case scenario for the categorical outcome. Okay, so whatever the data is missing, so worst case able to fill the missing value with worst case scenario. And similarly, the best case imputation can able to fill with the best case scenario. And next one should be that expectation of maximization. So here the expectation of maximization means that we can able to substitute the best missing value using ML imputation. So that means all the missing values going to be substituted with ML imputation. So that means in each step, the expected values are going to be calculated based on all complete data points. Okay, in each step, the expected values are going to be calculated based on all complete data points. And for in M step, the procedure imputes the expected values from the each step and then maximizes the likelihood function to obtain the new parameter estimates. Okay, so the M step, what I'm going to do, so what is the expected values what I'm calculated from the E step, so that should be considered as the input and then the maximizes the likelihood function of that one. And next one is multiple imputation. So what should be this multiple imputation? So the multiple imputation is quickly become the gold standard approach to handle the missing data values computationally and complex. So multiple imputation means here where you can able to handle this missing data, but computational should be complex. That's why you can able to choose which this method of this type of multiple imputation is not going to be chosen here. So let's have a look on this again. We're going to see what type of missing data definition, and so the missing data and methods will be classified two types like listwise deletion, pairwise, and variable deletion. Okay, so the listwise deletion means we're able to delete the missing data along completely for the entire set, and for pairwise deletion we have to be find out which should be the not that much preferable one, and the variable deletion, so just now based on the application which variable is not that much important, that is going to be deleted. And similarly, the imputation methods will be of two types like simple and multiple imputation. So the main imputation means where you can able to fill the data uh, with a mean value. Suppose in a table, just I'm taking A and then B. So here data is missing and here data is missing. So for this one, the data what is missed, so that should be filled with the mean of that variable V1 and V2. Let's take another thing. So the mean of the table is going to be calculated and that one is going to fill with the mean. And for this conditional mean, so here we can able to apply some of the condition rules on the mean, and then according to that we have to be fill it. And the regression case mean means, so based on the case wise we have to be calculate the mean value and then have to fill the missing data with that mean value. And next one is the regression imputation, so where we can able to perform the exact value of the missing data based on some regression equation. And worst case simply last observation carry forward, so based on the last two or previous two observation, the value that can be filled with the missing data. And interpolation, best case imputation, and EM imputation. So these are the some of the uh, test cases that should be able to fill with the missing value, and multiple imputation also. Okay, so let's see this. So some of the handling methods will be delisting the cases, so listwise, pairwise deletion, and imputation will be substitution methods. So listwise deletion, so what I'm going to do, so this method is going to be used whenever the proportion is less than 15%, and it can be used for any kind of statistical analysis, and no special computations are required here, and it should be it can able to some considerable portion of the data is going to be missed here. So by seeing this example, so here the data is missing, so what I'm going to do is simply deleting the rows. And pairwise deletion, so which should be dropping the cases based on analysis by analysis. So among these three, age, gender, and income, so the gender is not going to have that much preference, so that's why I'm going to be deleted based on my analysis. And next one is the variable deletion. So here also the variable is going to be deleted based on case by case analysis. So out of these three variables, if I'm going to see according to my application, so it should be a gender, age, and income. So gender is not that much important. I'm going to be considered according to my application. So that's why I'm going to delete the entire variable itself. Our next one should be mean imputation. So here the mean imputation means, so where this value are going to be filled with mean of that variable. So like, so just now what I said here, there should be mean, right? So mean, so how to calculate the mean? So I'm taking the mean of this entire variable, like 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 9 plus 8 plus 6 plus, right? So total number of cases 10. So the mean value what I'm getting, so that should be filled with the missing data. And similarly for the variable 3, I'm going to calculate the mean of the variable, and that the thing should be 6.72, that should be filled with the variable. So the conditional mean, what I said, so how to calculate the mean. So if the mean value is greater than 7, or I can able to write whatever it is, so it may be 8. So then I have to assign this as the missing value. Similarly, if the mean value what I'm getting should be less than 7, then it should be treated as the 7 as the missing value. Right. So this is the conditional mean imputation. And next one is the case mean imputation. So here the case mean is that, so here we have to calculate the mean based on the case wise. Okay, suppose, so here the data is missing, right? So for this missing data I have to calculate the mean of this. So 7 plus 2, 6 by 2, that should be 13 divided by 2, 6.50, that should be filled with the missing data what I'm getting here. So similarly I have to calculate the case mean imputation I'm applying. So case wise I have to calculate the mean value. So 7 plus 8 by 2, so 7.5 I'm getting, so that should be filled with the missing value. Next one is regression imputation. So regression imputation means we have the missing data what I'm getting, that should be filled with the exact value. So based on regression equation. So here also we have to fill with the regression equation. So for this we have to be predicted. So for this we initially have to define some regression equation based on my application. So for this, so what I have to do for the variable 1 I'm going to calculate, so that should be filled with 6.21 minus 7.3 0.734 into 7 plus 1.139 into 6. So I'm getting a 6.32, that should be filled with. So like this I have to predict the value based on regression imputation. And the last observation carry forward, that means, so here we can fill the missing values based on the same outcome of most recent time what I'm going to be observed. Okay, so one way of doing this, I can able to last observation carry forward in this fashion, or can able to perform in this fashion. If I'm going to see last observation carry forward in this fashion, so I'm going to be able to calculate the average of T1 or T2. I can able to do that. So that is the thing I can able to have this here. So another way of that thing is that, so the most recently occurring item should also be filled with the missing data. So among this, the most occurring this 9, 9 comes 2 times, and 8, 1, 2, 3, and 7 comes 2 times, and 5 comes 1 time only. So based on this analysis, so the 8 is occurring more recent time, so that I can able to fill in this value 8. So similarly here also I have to be analyze most number of item repeated, that should be 8 if I'm going to take, so 1 only, and 1, 2, 3, 6 is repeated 3 times, 5, 7, 1 time, and 7 is 3 times. So if I'm going to take 6 and then 7, so what I'm going to take, I can able to take in between of 6 from 7, so let it be, I'm going to take more value, that should be say 7 or 7.5, that should be filled with the missing data. And interpolation is the thing where we can able to fill with the missing values, and that should be useful for the longitudinal data sets. So here that we seeing this graph, what I'm can able to obtain. So here that the data, the axis what I'm getting should also comes under minuses. So that means the missing data is going to be occurring here. So our next one is that worst case and best case imputation. So here the worst case and best case means here we can able to fill some missing data is going on here. So for this finding out, I can able to do two types of things like worst case and best case. So the best case value what I'm going to get should be 6.32, and worst case it should be 1.31. So that is lower higher values. So those one values I can able to fill with the missing data. So that should be the worst case replaces the missing value is the worst case scenario for the categorical outcome. Similarly, the best case replaces the missing value best case scenario for categorical outcome. And expectation maximization. So this is the other kind of method or what I said. It should be substitution based on ML imputation what we got another example of this. So here we can able to perform two types of steps. So that should be E step and M step. So in each step the expected values are going to be calculated based on all the complete data points. Okay, the expected value here what I'm going to get, so that should be going to be calculated here. And similarly for M step, so here the values what I'm going to get from the E step should be taken as input, and then we have to perform the maximization to obtain the new parameter estimations. Okay, so in E step the expected values are calculated based on complete point. In M step, so the expected values are going to be taken from M step and then how to maximize the likelihood function of this. And very last thing what is that should be multiple imputation. So the multiple imputation is quickly become a gold standard approach to handle the missing data values, and it should be also computationally complex. So among all this single imputation, so the multiple imputation plays a vital role, and it should be also become a gold standard approach, and where we can able to be uh, where the complex computations is going on, and for this it should be for that the complexity going on increases at that time. The multiple imputation plays a vital. So this should be the various methods that are available for handling the missing data. So deletion methods. So just now what I said should be listwise deletion, pairwise deletion, and variable deletion. So these three will be considered as the deletion method where we are able to delete the cases or variables or entire list itself. Imputation means what we call it as substitution methods. So mainly it should be of two types like single and multiple. So again this single is going to classify in different types what we call it as mean. So where the missing value is going to be mean, conditional mean, case mean, and regression imputation, last observation carry forward, and worst case imputation, and interpolation, best case, imputation. So like this we can able to perform different types of imputations according to the kind of application. So if my application is X something, so what kind of imputation I can able to perform, that is the question. So for this X application, so I have to find it out whether it should be better or it may be better or it may be better. So for this among these three will have to be find it out what are the advantages and disadvantages of all the things we have to be taken into consideration, and for that we have to be find it out that which should be the best imputation method. So apply this on X, find out the result, and similarly apply the conditional mean, find out the result, and case mean, find out the result, and regression also apply, find out the result. So which results is going to be better suited for that application X, so that should be treated as the best method for that application. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.